My name is Hatim, and today I'll be talking about my incredibly strange journey as a musician from Pakistan and how I turned a sort of niche obsession into my life's work. So, around the age of 15, I pretty much decided that I wanted to do music for a living, which obviously is not what Pakistani parents or families want to hear, but I was quite hell bent on doing this as my life's work. And it was a very bad idea, obviously, since not only was there no musical industry for underground indie artists in Pakistan at the time, this is around 2015, but I had no musical skills. I couldn't sing, I couldn't play an instrument, and I had generally no skills whatsoever. And it was also very confusing for everyone else because I was doing well at school and I had good grades and I could have easily made a life for myself in that way, but I was very, very hell-bent on ruining my life through music. So that is exactly what I did, and I'm going to show you kind of how. So I'll give you examples of the disparity between my dreams and what was going on in Pakistan at the time. So this is the sort of music people were listening to in Pakistan at the time. And stuff like this. All very beautiful music that I'm a huge fan of, but the only issue was that the music that I wanted to create sounded a bit like this. So as you can see, not a good idea. But I really wanted to do this. And to kind of understand why, I'll have to go slightly into my background and my story. So I had a very strange childhood, a very depressing childhood, and I was actually diagnosed with depression at a very young age. And I struggled a lot with loneliness and connection and expression. And it was something that made me feel like I had no direction in life. And music sort of gave me that direction and that sort of hope that I could do something with my life. And it was the only thing that made me emotionally connect not only with myself, but with people from around the world. So once you get that feeling about anything in your life, it's very hard to ignore it, and you feel like it has to become your life's mission. And that's what I did. But I think the bigger question is, how did I end up doing it with all of these obstacles in my way? And the short answer is I discovered electronic music. I discovered EDM, dance music. I discovered artists like Skrillex and Porter Robinson. And the thing that it did for me was that it made me realize that I don't need a band, I don't need a studio, I don't need a whole team of people behind me. All I need is a laptop, and I can make all sorts of music in the world. And the reason it fascinated me was because whereas pop and rap music at the time was very formulaic and all the music on the radio was all sounding the same, the things that you could do with electronic music were truly fascinating. Anything could be created. I'll give you a few examples of just the versatility of the stuff that I was inspired by. And then some stuff which some of you may not like hearing.
Oh my
God! So although there's a huge range between these sounds, I think that was what really inspired me. It made me feel like truly anything is possible if you put enough energy and time into electronic production, and you can create all sorts of obscene and beautiful sounds from it. And that's kind of what awakened something in me to start creating electronic music. But the main thing that sort of changed my life and kind of gave me my whole career was the art of sampling. So to quickly sort of explain what sampling is basically taking existing pieces of music and re-engineering them or reusing them in a way that they sound unique enough to become parts of your own songs. And I'll show you a few examples of how this is done. So there was a song by Lata Mangeshkar which was famously sampled by Britney Spears, and this is what it kind of sounds like.
Baby, can't you see?
And then there are other examples like Billie Eilish's brother, who does her production, Phineas, kind of recorded a stop sign in Australia and turned it into one of her most famous songs.
Duh.
And then moving towards like Pakistani music and sampling in Pakistani music, the band Towers sampled Abda Parveen in one of their most popular recent songs. So this idea of sampling and the fact that I could take the music that inspired me, that moved me and gave me so much in life, that I could sample it and reuse it in so many different ways was infinitely fascinating to me, because in every way, every sound in the world, basically, every song in the world, every sound in the world is an instrument on its own. If you have the production skills to sort of manipulate many different ways, you can kind of make anything from one piece of sound. And that's what I started doing at around the age of 15. I started messing around with vocals, I started messing around with guitars, and I started messing around with anything I could get my hands on. And I was doing this all self-taught, obviously, because there were not a lot of artists in Pakistan who I could talk to, and not a lot of training. So I started doing things with the rudimentary sort of programs that I had on my computer, and I didn't realize that the technique that I had formed over these years was unique and so different that it would give me my career in a sense, because I was using techniques that were very left field and very strange, and I'll kind of show you how it works. So the technique mainly just involves manipulating sounds to the point where you can't even tell where they're originally from. So you basically do as many things, strange things as you can to that sound to turn it into completely different instruments. So a guitar can become drums, someone's voice can become a pad, anything kind of possible if you get to that level. So I'll kind of show you a very simple example. So here's like a small sample from a song by O Wonder called Technicolor Beat.
Jump into the heat, spinning on a feet in a technical.
So with this one sample, I gave myself 30 minutes as a challenge to see how many things I could create from it for this talk. And I kind of created stuff that sounded a bit like this. And I created stuff that sounded like this. So this main technique is basically cutting up a lot of parts of the song and then removing a lot of the dynamics and focusing on certain harmonics and accentuating them in a way that the song that we just heard can turn into a rhythmic part of your song, or it can basically turn into anything. So then I also created stuff like this. And this. And finally, this. And this sort of very short, kind of not very impressive example just goes to show that
Jump into the heat.
you can take any small sample or piece of music and kind of re-engineer it to become whatever you sort of envision. And the reason why it's so special is because it gives you a unique sound, because nobody can recreate those sounds until they use the same sample. And since you re-engineer it to the point where it can't be recognized, you have a unique sound because nobody can create what you are creating. And it's a sort of thing where, like, now that I'm working with clients and working with labels and companies, they want unique sounds. They want sounds that belong to them. And that is why it's given me this sort of edge when it comes to creating music. It sounds slightly more impressive if I show you how it is utilized in my music. You won't be able to hear it as easily, but it's still a part of the music. So I did a cover for my friend, a remix almost for my friend Ravalio for his song Irade, and it sounds like this. And then I did an original song in Urdu called Sai, which used a lot of these techniques. Also, I have no idea how the audio quality is back there, so if this sounds terrible, I'm very, very sorry. So moving on to the next part, I'll kind of quickly move to the main part of the talk, which is how did I turn this obsession with sampling and with audio manipulation and turn it into my career? And for that, I'll have to show you some more embarrassing examples of my music and kind of show how it grew over time. So I was around 15, messing with people's voices, with acapellas, and kind of creating music that sounded a bit like this. And music that sounded like this. So right off the bat, I can tell you that this is not good music. It's not very well mixed, it's not very well produced, but the ideas and the techniques being used there were interesting enough that even at the age of 15 or 16, smaller indie record labels and artists started reaching out to me. And this gave me enough motivation to not only work on sampling, but also improve as a producer, to work on the art of mixing and the art of synthesis and kind of increase my skills, because the more you learn about producing music, the more tools you get for sampling. And that can apply to a lot of fields in terms of if you get really good at one thing, it will benefit the rest. And if you generally learn about a subject, you will get better at the niche obsessions that you have. So that's kind of what I did. And around the age of 18, I started signing with slightly larger record labels and creating music that sounded like this. And music that sounded like this. So at this point, obviously the music was good enough that I was getting to larger labels, and it was also, I had obviously improved the production techniques. I had also started singing because I realized that no matter how bad my voice is, I am good enough at production to make it sound listenable, which was great because that gave me another sort of tool in my arsenal to sort of work towards further. And what this really did was that it started a sort of snowball effect, because the sound I was creating in like 2017, 2018, in the EDM space abroad, because there was not really much happening here. The sound that I was creating was unique enough that larger and larger labels started contacting me, until it got to a point where this one sound sort of defined me as an artist. And I started working with a company, which was a very big deal for me because they created the careers of some of my favorite artists like Illenium, which some people might have heard of, and Set the Sky. And here are examples of songs I did with them. And this. So you can tell that obviously the production has improved, and there were obviously other artists involved because it was more of a collaborative effort to get onto get bigger opportunities. But the core sound that I had cultivated over time was still present in all of the music that I was creating, which was the most important thing for me. And then coming to the final part of this journey, I kind of, again, the snowball effect, or the snowball got so much larger and moved much faster until there was a point where I got to sign with my dream record label, Seeking Blue, which at the time had all of my favorite artists already working on it, which for me was a huge moment. And this is the song we did with them. So that was that song. And then the reason why it was so important was because it kind of put me in a place where I could basically end up working with Sony, which was the thing that changed my life and kind of made my dreams come true. And I ended up doing 2 songs with Sony. And after that, everything really changed, because you get onto a platform then where your sound exists and your skills exist. And then from there, I realized midway that what I'm doing full time is working for people. I'm producing for them. I'm writing songs for them. And it was at that point that I realized that this really far-fetched dream had sort of come true. And it was very hard to believe at the start, but it had happened. And the reason for telling you all this is not to flex or anything. It's more to like give an example, which I will elaborate on further as I reach the end of this talk. But to talk a bit about the present, I'm obviously back in Pakistan now, and I actually, because of my music, got to do what my parents wanted. I went to college because I got a scholarship to study music technology in the US at Connecticut College. And then I came back here and I wanted to explore the growing music industry here and sort of create art with all the talented people that are in Pakistan, with all the unique sounds. There's so much more to sample. And the thing I want to kind of leave everyone with is, if you're a young artist or if you're a young musician or you're doing anything which might not be very favorable in these circumstances, I'll give you a small sort of anecdote. So around 2020 is when I kind of climbed out of depression. But at the same time, I was questioning a lot of parts of my life and what I wanted to do with my future. I was about to graduate college, and I kind of felt a bit hopeless. So I considered quitting music after 7 years. And at the same time, we created a sort of collective in Pakistan called Miracle Mangal. And these people were other artists who had journeys like mine, and I never really realized that there were people other than myself doing this for some reason. And these people, we banded together and sort of motivated each other, taught each other things, and started to create this environment for creation in Pakistan, which I had never seen in my first 6 years of working as part of the industry. And just to illustrate some of the things they've done within the industry, I'll give you 3 examples of songs that you might be familiar with that they created. Then, of course, this one. And lastly, probably most recognizably,
Yeah. Pull up on you like agency.
So the point of showing that is not to shamelessly promote my friends, even though I would love to do that. The point was that the takeaway that I wanted to give everyone from this was that if you have a certain obsession or love or passion for something, and the obsession is strong enough to get you through the hardships of working in tough environments and working basically in vacuums where there is nobody else to guide you or to help you create, then there are spaces where you can actually succeed. And it all comes from passionately putting in hours of work into something which you believe you can do really well, and getting so good at it to the point where nobody can ignore you regardless of where you're from. So if we could have done it in such an environment where nothing really existed for us, then I feel like in these environments where these things are more widely accepted and there are ways to learn more about them, then I feel like anyone can do them. And that is about it. Thank you.